Hello everyone, this is Earth Archives. We all know that inventions are based on certain specific purposes, but did you know? Some inventions were unexpected at first. Let's take a look at what inventions there are today. Before the show starts, please subscribe, share, and turn on the little bell. This will help us grow faster. Without further ado, the show begins. Gather round everyone, because I'm about to spill the tea on something pretty epic. Ever heard of Alexander Graham Bell? You know, the genius who blessed us with the telephone. Well, he supposedly dropped this wisdom nugget: when one door closes, another opens. Though he never really said it, the vibe's pretty spot on. What he meant was, every time you hit a wall, you might just be a hop, skip, and a jump away from the next big thing. And if you're sitting there thinking, yeah, right, then boy, do I have some stories for you. Let's dive into 7 inventions that practically blindsided their creators. These are the tales of accidental brilliance, where mishaps turned into eureka moments, and oops morphed into aha. From kitchen flops to science lab blunders, each story is a testament to the fact that sometimes the road to invention is paved not with meticulous plans but with serendipitous twists. Buckle up, because we're about to embark on an adventure through the annals of accidental invention history, where the unexpected is the main ingredient to sheer brilliance. Penicillin. Folks, buckle up for a tale that's sure to knock your socks off. Ever pop a pill to kick a nasty infection? Well, you have a messy lab and a bit of luck to thank for that lifesaver. Picture this: the year is 1928, and Alexander Fleming, a London-based bacteriologist, just strolled back into his lab after a breezy vacation, only to find out he'd won the jackpot in the lottery of science, all thanks to his less than stellar housekeeping skills. So, there's Fleming, probably thinking about unpacking his holiday suitcase, when bam! He notices one of his petri dishes isn't like the others. This one's rocking a moldy makeover, courtesy of some accidental contamination. But here's where it gets wild. The area around the mold was like a ghost town, no bacteria in sight. Talk about a what the fungus moment. In a stroke of genius, Fleming decides to name this moldy miracle juice penicillin, after the Penicillium notatum fungus throwing the bacteria eviction party. He goes on to publish his findings, although he's scratching his head over whether this discovery is anything to write home about. It was a tough nut to crack, purifying and stabilizing this wonder mold. Fast forward a decade, and a bunch of chemists over at Oxford University stumble upon Fleming's paper. These brainiacs get their gears turning and decide to take a crack at turning this fungal find into a medicinal marvel. Roll out the red carpet in 1940, because penicillin makes its grand debut on the medical scene, saving a patient from the clutches of death. By 1942, this moldy concoction is all the rage, and fast forward to today, it's the MVP of antibiotics worldwide. Smoke detectors. Let's take a minute to talk about something you probably walk past a dozen times a day without giving it a second glance: the humble smoke detector. This little gadget perched on ceilings and walls is the unsung hero of household safety. Believe it or not, this low-key lifesaver has dramatically slashed the risk of you becoming a fire statistic by more than 50%. And for this, hats off to Walter Jaeger, a Swiss physicist with an accidental stroke of genius. Flashback to the 1930s, Jaeger's busy in his lab, tinkering away on a mission to invent a poison gas sensor. But life had other plans. While puffing on his cigarette, he noticed his contraption started going bananas, not because of poison gas, but because of the smoke from his cig. Talk about a light bulb moment. This serendipitous discovery was the first step towards the smoke detectors we know and rely on today. Now, zip forward to the 1950s. Smoke detectors start making the grand entrance, strutting their stuff in industrial settings. But here's the catch: these gadgets were the champagne and caviar of their day, too pricey for the average Joe or Jane to sprinkle around their home. Fast forward to the groovy 1970s, and technology has done its magic, making smoke detectors as affordable as disco balls and bell-bottoms. By 1977, over 12 million units are flying off the shelves. Velcro. Picture this: George de Mestral, a Swiss engineer with a curiosity bigger than Switzerland itself, is just out for a leisurely stroll with his furry best friend. Nothing out of the ordinary, right? But little did he know, this walk was about to stick with him, quite literally. They return home, and both are sporting the latest in cocklebur chic. Now, for most of us, getting tangled up in burrs is a nuisance at best. But for de Mestral, it was a light bulb moment. Diving head first into the world of these natural hitchhikers, de Mestral discovers these tiny burrs are fashion gurus in their own right, sporting mini hooks perfect for latching onto the loops in fabric and fur. And thus, the seed, or should I say, burr, of an idea was planted. George gets cracking on creating the world's first hook and loop fabric, an adventure that would eat up over a decade of his life. By 1955, boom! Velcro is born, a snazzy blend of the French words for velvet, velours, and hook, crochet. Forget the notion that it's some plush, velvety affair though, this baby is all nylon, all the time. Now, the fashion world might have given it the cold shoulder initially, but NASA, they were all over it like white on rice. Astronauts were rocking Velcro on their spacesuits, and shuttles were decked out in the stuff. NASA was so into it, in fact, that half the universe thinks they invented it. Cut to today, and Velcro's not just a wardrobe staple. It's everywhere, from snazzy sneakers to state-of-the-art healthcare gizmos, even in cars and planes. The sticky saga doesn't end there, though. After decades of research, the boffins finally cracked the code on how to hush that trademark rip and grip sound in 2021. So, the next time you're pulling apart some Velcro with that oh so satisfying RIP, take a moment to tip your hat to George de Mestral, the man who went for a walk and ended up launching a fastening revolution. Dynamite. Folks, gather round for a tale of invention and unintended consequences that'll make your hair stand on end. Picture this, the mid-19th century, a time of top hats, steam engines, and a curious Italian chemist called Ascanio Sobrero. One day, Sobrero's messing around in his lab, mixing up some glycerol with a splash of nitric and sulfuric acids, and voila, he whips up nitroglycerin, a concoction so explosive it makes gunpowder look like baking powder. But here's where the plot thickens. Sobrero, our Italian chemist, is mortified by what he's created. He's looking at this volatile substance, thinking of the sheer power at his fingertips, and he's like, nope, not what I signed up for. Sobrero wants nothing to do with it. He's anti-explosion, anti-chaos, the whole 9 yards. While Sobrero's wringing his hands, Nobel's rubbing his together. He sees potential where Sobrero sees disaster. Fast forward to 1867, and Nobel introduces the world to dynamite, making nitroglycerin less, I'm going to blow up your lab, and more, let's responsibly move some mountains. Though let's be real, he did accidentally blow up his factories twice in the process. Whoops. Fast forward again, and Nobel's sitting on a mountain of cash thanks to his explosive invention, a far cry from Sobrero's worst nightmares. Feeling a bit guilty, perhaps, Nobel decides to leave a legacy that's a bit less explosive. Cue the Nobel Prize, celebrating those who foster peace, innovation, and humanity, no, the opposite of blowing things up. As for Sobrero, he's recorded in history with a hefty dose of inventor's remorse, quoted as saying, "When I think of all the victims, I am almost ashamed to admit to be its discoverer." It's a classic case of, be careful what you cook up in the lab, sometimes, you end up with a bit more bang than you bargained for. Blood thinner warfarin. Pull up a chair and let me spin you a yarn about one of the most oddball turns in the annals of medical history. Our story starts out in the fields, not a sterile lab, with a bunch of cows and sheep munching on what they thought was a tasty snack, sweet clover hay. But oh boy, were they in for a surprise. So, picture this, it's the roaring 20s, flappers are dancing the Charleston, and meanwhile, livestock are dropping like flies from a mysterious ailment that's got them bleeding internally after just about any old nick or cut. Enter our hero, a Canadian vet named Frank Schofield, who's playing detective and figures out that this isn't your garden variety hay, it's moldy with a side of deadly. Yep, this hay is packed with an anticoagulant that's putting the kibosh on the whole blood clotting process. Fast forward to 1940, and there's a team of bright sparks at the University of Wisconsin, with a chap named Carl Link at the helm, who roll up their sleeves and isolate this mischief-making compound. They whip up a super potent version and bam, warfarin is born, taking its name from the Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation who was footing the bill for this groundbreaking work. But here's the kicker, before warfarin became the darling of cardiology, saving humans from the perils of heart attacks, strokes, and pesky blood clots, it had a stint as rat poison. You heard right. For a while, warfarin was the go-to for keeping the rodent population in check. Talk about a career pivot. It wasn't until the mid-1950s that warfarin switched teams from vermin control to vascular savior. Among its first human champions was none other than President Dwight D. Eisenhower, who, after a heart attack in 1955, was treated with this former rat poison. Matches. Let's huddle around the campfire of history for a bit, shall we? If we're to believe old Charles Darwin, and let's face it, the man knew a thing or two, fire was the best thing since sliced bread. Or, well, since sliced bread wasn't a thing yet, let's just say it was the hottest thing since the dawn of language. But getting that fire started, now that was a whole other story. Back in the day, folks were striking flint and steel like they were trying to win an Olympic medal in manual labor. Or they were spinning fire drills like they were DJing a prehistoric rave. Exhausting, to say the least. Enter the world of early matches, where chemistry was the new black. Picture the Prometheus match of 1829, a little vial of sulfuric acid all cozy in a paper wrap. Want to see a magic trick? Crush it, and whoosh, you've got fire. Even Darwin, when he wasn't busy shaking the pillars of creation with his theories, liked to show off by biting these matches to light them. Let's just say it wasn't the safest party trick in the book. And then, as if by accident, actually, exactly by accident, John Walker, a British pharmacist with a flair for serendipity, drags a chemically coated stick across his hearth. Boom, fire. In 1827, he starts selling these Congreves at his pharmacy, tipping his hat to the inventor of a certain type of rocket with the name. Walker's matches were basically the rock stars of their day, but here's the kicker, he never patents them. So, quicker than you can strike a match, imitators flood the market, and poor old Walker's name gets lost in the smoke of history. It wasn't until the dust settled, long after he clocked out in 1859, that folks finally gave him a nod as the true mastermind behind the first friction match. So, next time you light a match without a second thought, give a little tip of the hat to John Walker, the unsung hero who made it as easy as, well, striking a match. Coca-Cola. Buckle up, because I'm about to tell you about the fizzy sensation that took the world by storm, all thanks to an accident in a pharmacy. Picture this, 1866, America, where John Pemberton, a pharmacist with a flair for experimentation, is mixing up a storm in his lab. Pemberton, a Civil War vet, had gotten a little too cozy with morphine during his recovery and was on a mission to kick the habit with a homemade concoction. His first stab at it resulted in something called Pemberton's French wine coca, a cocktail that wouldn't pass muster in today's market. Why? Well, it was a heady mix of coca wine, yep, that's alcohol mixed with coca leaves, the stuff cocaine comes from, and cola nuts for that kick of caffeine. Believe it or not, this brew wasn't originally meant for the soda aisle. It was Pemberton's bid to create a painkiller. This French wine concoction enjoyed its fair share of popularity. But here comes the plot twist. Georgia got hit by the temperance movement, and suddenly, Pemberton's boozy painkiller was a no-go. In a stroke of genius, or perhaps desperation, Pemberton swapped wine for sugar syrup and, in a happy little accident, mixed this new formula with carbonated water. One sip of the fizzy drink and Pemberton's eyes must have lit up. Medicine, he thought, as he pivoted to marketing it as a fountain drink, dubbing it Coca-Cola, in homage to its key ingredients. Tragically, Pemberton's story doesn't have the happiest of endings. His health took a nosedive, as did his finances, thanks to his unshaken morphine dependency. He passed away in poverty just a couple of years after Coca-Cola's creation, having sold his shares to his partner, Asa Griggs Candler. Candler had a bit more luck, or maybe just better business sense, steering Coca-Cola into the behemoth of refreshment we know and love today. So next time you crack open a cold one, spare a thought for ol' John Pemberton, whose quest for relief gave us all a reason to say, ah.